Everyone asks me how to build a faceless video pipeline. Almost nobody asks the question that actually matters once you have built one, which is what does it cost to run? And I get why. The building is the exciting part, the cost is the boring part, and the boring part is exactly where people get surprised 3 months in when the bill is bigger than they expected, or pleasantly surprised when it is smaller. I run a faceless pipeline every single day on my own graphics card with a mix of local and paid pieces. So let me give you the honest cost breakdown, dollar by dollar, including the costs people forget to count. Let me lay out the pipeline first so the costs have somewhere to land. A finished video goes through roughly 4 stages. There is the script, the words that get spoken. There is the voice, turning those words into audio. There is the rendering, putting the video together with footage, captions, and visuals over that audio. And there is the publishing, getting it onto the channel on a schedule. Each of those stages has a cost profile, and they are wildly different from each other, which is the whole interesting part. Some are nearly free, some cost real money per video. And the trick to a cheap pipeline is knowing which is which. Start with the script. This is a model call. I use AI to help draft the script, and that runs through an API that charges by the amount of text. Here is the thing people get wrong about this cost. Text is cheap. A full video script is a few thousand words, and generating a few thousand words of text from a model costs a small fraction of $1. Even with the back and forth of drafting and refining, the script stage is one of the cheapest parts of the whole pipeline. If you are worried about AI costs, the text generation is almost never where your money goes. It is pennies per video, and I mean that literally. Now the voice, and this is where the first real money shows up. Turning a full script into natural spoken audio is more expensive than generating the text was, because good text-to-speech is priced by the amount of audio you produce, and a full video is a lot of audio. This is a paid service for me. I want to be completely clear that the voice is not free. It is a metered service that charges per character or per chunk of audio, and across a full-length video it adds up to a real, if modest, amount. It is still not a large number per video, but it is the single biggest direct per video cost in my pipeline, and it is the one that scales linearly. Every video I make pays the voice cost again. There is no amortizing it. Let me say a bit more about the voice cost, because it is the one most people underestimate when they plan a pipeline. The reason voice costs more than text is a matter of volume. A script is a few thousand words of text, and text is light. But when you turn that script into spoken audio, you are producing 10 to 14 minutes of continuous speech, and that is a lot of generated audio, billed by the amount you produce. So the same words cost almost nothing as text, and a real, if modest, amount as voice. There is also a quality dimension here that costs money. Cheap or free text-to-speech exists, but it sounds robotic. And for a channel people actually watch, the voice carries the whole thing. So I pay for a voice that sounds natural, and that choice is deliberate. I could cut this cost to near zero with a worse voice, and the videos would be worse for it. That is a real trade-off, quality of voice against cost of voice, and I have chosen to spend on the part the audience hears most. Then the rendering, and this is where the story gets interesting, because rendering is the part that feels like it should be the most expensive and is actually nearly free per video. I render locally, on my own graphics card, on this machine, composing the video, laying the footage and captions and visuals over the audio, and encoding the whole thing into a finished file. All of that happens on hardware I already own, and the marginal cost of rendering one more video on hardware I already own is essentially nothing. There is no per video charge, no API meter ticking. I hit render and the machine does the work. If I were renting cloud compute to render, this would be the most expensive line by far. Because I render locally, it is the cheapest, on paper, at $0 per video. But I said on paper, and that is the honest catch I need to dig into. Local rendering is free per video, only because two big costs got paid somewhere else and do not show up on a per video basis. The first is the graphics card itself. It is a real piece of hardware that cost real money up front. It happens to be an older card I already own for other reasons, which is the only reason this math works so well for me. If you went out and bought a card specifically to render videos, you would be carrying that cost, and you would need to render a lot of videos before the free per video rendering paid back the price of the card. The hardware is not free. It is just paid for once, in advance, instead of per video. The second hidden cost of local rendering is power. Rendering is demanding work. It pushes the graphics card and the rest of the machine hard, and that draws electricity. Every render costs some power, and over a daily cadence that power adds up to a small but real number on the electricity bill. It is not large, but it is not zero, and it is the kind of cost that is completely invisible until you actually think about it. So the honest version of free local rendering is free of any per video charge, but quietly carrying a share of the hardware cost and the small power cost every time. So let me add up where the bill actually lands for a single video. The script is pennies. The voice is the biggest direct cost, a modest but real per video charge. The rendering is zero per video in direct charges, plus a small slice of power and the long amortized cost of the card. Put together, the direct cash cost of producing one finished video is genuinely small. Small enough that the per video number is not the thing that should drive your decisions. The per video economics of a local pipeline are good, and they are good specifically because the expensive part, the rendering, runs on hardware I already paid for. There is one more direct cost worth naming that people forget, which is the script writing model call, and the honest reason it stays cheap. I mentioned text is pennies, but let me explain why it does not creep up the way you might fear. A script generation is bounded, a fixed amount of text in and a fixed amount out, and it happens once per video. It does not loop, it does not run thousands of times, it does not scale with anything except the number of videos I make. So even though each video pays it again, the per video number is tiny and predictable, and it never surprises me on the bill. This is the opposite of an agent wrapped around a high-frequency task, where the cost can balloon. A once per video bounded text generation is about the safest, most predictable AI cost there is. And it is a good reminder that not all AI costs behave the same. Some scale dangerously, and some, like this one, stay flat and small. Let me also touch storage, because finished videos are not small and they add up. A library of rendered videos takes real disk space, and the backup of that library takes more. It is not a large recurring cash cost if you already have the drives, but it is a creeping one, and it is the kind of thing that is invisible until a disk fills up at the worst possible moment. So I count it, not because it is big, but because it is the sort of quiet cost that turns into a crisis if you ignore it entirely. A pipeline that produces a video a day produces a lot of files a year, and they have to live somewhere, backed up somewhere, and that somewhere is a cost, even if it is a modest one. Now the cost almost everyone leaves out, and the one that is actually the largest if you count it honestly: my own time. A pipeline is not a thing you build once and never touch. Things break. A service changes its interface. A render hangs. A step that worked yesterday fails today because some input was shaped slightly differently than expected. An upload lands as a draft instead of going live because a platform changed its buttons. Every one of those is time, my time, spent diagnosing and fixing rather than producing. The cash cost per video is tiny. The time cost of keeping the whole pipeline alive and healthy is the real expense, and it does not show up on any bill. It shows up as the mornings I spend fixing something instead of doing the work the pipeline was supposed to free me for. Let me also draw out the comparison that actually decides whether local rendering is worth it for you. Because it is not automatic, the alternative to rendering on my own card is renting cloud compute to render, paying by the minute for a powerful machine in someone else's data center. That has no upfront hardware cost and no power bill on your side. You just pay per render. So which wins depends entirely on volume. If you render one video a month, renting is almost certainly cheaper because you would never come close to paying off the cost of a graphics card and you would leave it idle most of the time. If you render every day like I do, owning the hardware wins decisively, because the card is busy often enough that the per video cost of renting would have long ago exceeded what the card cost to buy. This is the same logic as anything you can buy or rent. Owning wins when you use it a lot. Renting wins when you use it occasionally. Local rendering being cheap is not a universal truth. It is a truth for high steady volume on hardware you already have. I want to be honest about that because it is the thing that breaks the fantasy of a fully hands-off money printer, which is how these pipelines sometimes get sold. A faceless pipeline does not run itself for free forever. It runs cheaply per video, and it saves enormous amounts of repetitive labor, but it demands ongoing maintenance, and that maintenance is skilled time you either spend yourself or pay someone else to spend. When I tell you my per video cost is small, that number is real, but it is the cash number. The full honest cost includes the hardware paid once, the power paid quietly, and my time paid continuously. So what is the takeaway if you are weighing whether to build one of these? The per video cost is genuinely tiny, and a local pipeline on hardware you already own is about as cheap as content production gets. But the honest total cost is hardware upfront, a little power on every render, a modest paid voice charge per video, pennies of text generation, and a steady drip of your own time keeping it all working. If you count only the cash per video, you will think it is almost free, and you will be surprised later. If you count all four, you will go in with clear eyes, and you will not be disappointed when the pipeline asks for an hour of your morning now and then. The reason I lay it out this way is that I would rather you build one of these, knowing the real numbers, than chase a fantasy of zero cost and zero effort that does not exist. The economics are genuinely good. They are just not magic, and the biggest cost is the one that never appears on a statement. So if someone asks me what it costs to run a faceless pipeline, my honest one-line answer is that the cash per video is small, but the cash per video is not the whole cost. And anyone who quotes you only that number is leaving out the parts that actually decide whether it is worth it for you. If you like the actual numbers behind real systems, the costs people skip and the trade-offs they gloss over, that is what I do here. So subscribe and follow along. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.